Um, yeah, so what brings us to this unknown practice on a Sunday? Sitting quietly with ourselves, coming to our seat and cordoning off time to check in a deeper and more intimate way with ourselves. So this is going to be wise effort, right effort. So it's going to be just sort of a weave of things. In case you haven't noticed, not everyone is doing this. Not everyone comes together, 40 people on a Sunday, to sit quietly. Yeah. So we recognize that in some intuitive way, something's missing, or that there's more to the story than what we've been experiencing. Somehow the devices, the conveniences we have, all the attempts we make to control things, to satisfy what we want, to push away what we don't want, are not delivering on their promise for satisfaction, happiness. So it can feel like something's missing, or something's not quite right, or worse, like there's something really wrong. And so there's this term that many of you know, dukkha, which is often globally translated as suffering, or dissatisfaction, or pain, or stress. And the Buddha talked about dukkha as being like a wheel with an axle that's not fitted properly, and how that leads to a bumpy ride. So when we look at the etymology of the word dukkha, the first syllable, means bad or difficult. And the ka means axle hole or an emptiness. And this suggests that a wheel with a poorly fitted axle creates a bumpy and an uncomfortable ride. And at life's best, things are not quite right. Like in one of the chants often recited in monasteries, there's a line that states, association with the disliked is dukkha, separation from the liked is dukkha, not attaining one's wishes is dukkha. So these are the types of things we experience in our day-to-day lives. I like you, I want to be with you, but you have to go, or I don't like you and I have to be with you and I don't want to, or I really want this and how come I can't get it? So these are the things that we know, we experience. And this is dukkha, these are so dukkha doesn't have to be this great suffering. It could be, but it's just some minor irritations, a little itch we can't scratch, the fly in the ointment, the ketchup on the white shirt, this is dukkha. So we come to practice with this intuitive sense that there's a confidence that there's more to life than what arises in the relative and the conceptual world. And that confidence can feel subtle, it can be kind of fleeting, and it's there. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Something calls us to listen to what's quiet versus noisy. How's the sound? Is this okay? Is it popping? Okay. Something, sorry. Bear with me. Something calls us. Can you hear that? Or is that good? Okay. Something calls us to listen to what's quiet versus what's noisy, what's outwardly demanding our attention. There's a confidence, there's a faith in us to follow that call. Yeah. And that's like a life jacket in this vast ocean of samsara, in this rising and passing of conditioned reality, this listening. What's more? What's here? What's here? Okay, I see all this stuff coming and going, and it's impermanent. And if I attach to it, there's dukkha. So, but what else is here? And that's what we do here. We sit and we listen with our hearts. So like I said, not everyone is interested in doing what we're doing here. Taking a look under the hood, seeing and experiencing and knowing directly what's actually here. What actually is reality? What does grasping and pushing away actually feel like? What does a pleasant or an unpleasant sensation actually feel like? What's it like to simply know a thought and not grasp it or push it away? What does the warmth of welcoming what's here feel like? And so this is wise effort. And it's much different than being blown around by the winds of experience. Even the winds that seem really compelling and exciting, if we don't meet what's arising in an upright way, in a way that's balanced, that doesn't get knocked over, knocked forward, pushed back, kind of like the practices we did with Jim, we'll be reactive, there'll be some reactivity and we'll be blown around by these winds. So the story of the Wizard of Oz came up, right? So in the story, Oz initially appears as a large and intimidating disembodied head, speaking with a booming voice from behind a large curtain with flames and all these things happening on the screen. And this illusion creates a sense of power and fear, and everyone is just captivated by it, So, but then Dorothy's dog, Toto, pulls back the curtain, Toto, little dog, pulls back the curtain and exposes Oz to be a frail old man using a mic, manipulating levers, using smoke effects to create this drama on the screen that keeps everyone mesmerized and enchanted by it. The man behind the curtain is revealed to be a fraud, but that's not where the story ends. These habits of mind don't go gracefully into the good night. A one-off sometimes isn't enough. Oh, I see that, but the habit can continue. So Oz replies to being discovered by saying, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. Look at the screen, stay mesmerized, trying to maintain control when the truth has been revealed. So this is similar to the unskillful habits we meet in our practice. Some require regular visits to truly meet and know what's arising in the mind and the effect it has on us and others. So back in the 80s, there was this short bit that was circling around called the autobiography in 5 short chapters. Does anyone not know that? Raise your hand. Because I've been thinking, oh, everybody must know this because I do, but it's a new generation kind of, so I brought it. So I'm going to read it. And everyone else who knows it already, just enjoy it because it's relevant. So the autobiography in 5 short chapters, which kind of typify this sort of practice of meeting what's arising again and again. The first chapter is, I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It's not my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I still don't see it. I've fallen again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It isn't my fault, and it still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. It's my fault. I know where I am. I get out immediately. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. In chapter 5, I walk down a different street. That's by Portia Nelson from 1977. It's called There's a Hole in My Sidewalk. Yeah, so that's wise effort. That's it. I'm going to go home now. That's it. You just keep walking down the street, falling into the hole, and then recognizing, oh, this is a habit. I don't need to do this. I can do something else. I can walk around it at first, but wait a second, there's that street over there. I don't even need to go here. I can go there. That's more skillful. That's more supportive. That's more beneficial. That leads to peace. That leads to ease. That leads to well-being. I'll go there. So we continue to inquire with mindfulness and investigation, energy, perseverance. That's a big one. Persistence. Not a big, we're going to go in there like I did when I was a Zen student. I'm going to go in there and get it. That's what we were all doing at the Zen Center. But it's just like this, Tejaniya talks about it. Sayadaw Tejaniya talks about just showing up, just meeting it, meeting what's here, what's arising. Yeah. So mindfulness, investigation, and energy, we use these 3 to pull back the curtain and see what's there. Investigation, what's here? Mindfulness, being present, to investigate, and the effort, the energy it takes to pull the curtain. And over time, we experience the positive results from this effort, and this motivates us to continue to grow on the path. To quote Ajahn Sucitto, on one retreat, I was actually named this: the deeper you go, the lighter it gets. The deeper you go, the lighter it gets. In Buddhism, there's a quality called saddha, and that is translated as faith or confidence. So it's the confidence that we can open up into something larger, that we have the capacity to release or set down the hindrances of grasping, of pushing away, of doubt, of fear, worry, numbing out. There's a confidence in the teachings and in our ability to study and practice them. There's a confidence in the Sangha, us all together, and the monastics and those who have come before us, and there's a confidence that this practice will bear fruit, that we're developing something, some new understanding or new way of relating. And sometimes on this path, we might not know what's needed in the moment. So in those cases, we bring in compassion, kindness, and patience. Is it possible to trust in this unfolding? And sometimes we know that the way we've historically related to something has been unskillful, and now we might not know any alternative way of being, kind of like when we're in the middle of that process of the autobiography in 5 chapters. I'm still in this hole. I don't know how am I here? What's going on? So is it possible to just feel into the felt experience of not knowing and trust that something will emerge? Something like, I know the way I've responded to this situation in the past has been unskillful. I know I'm feeling activated right now and I want to do that again. Can I just breathe with it? Can I be with it and just feel the unpleasantness of it right now? This hurts and this is what it feels like right now. Can I just stay there? I'm not saying this is easy, because we experience activation. We want to stop it. We want to change it. We want to do something. So what this practice is like, what's it like to feel it right now? Can I let that be enough for right now? And right now, that term is really important to emphasize, because this isn't the end of the story. We're not just feeling what's arising. That's the first part. Initially we take stock. What's here? This hurts. What's going on? We're in the hole. What's here? Ouch, it hurts. And once that's met and felt, there's more space to respond. So that opens up. So we get out of the reactivity, the clenching, and it opens up to space to respond. For me, I notice that when I've had encounters with someone that didn't go well, I'll practice this if I'm in my right mind. If I don't get on the wheel, just go, be reactive, feeling into irritation and or aversion towards someone. Often when I do this, there's a deeper level of sorrow there, and once that's met, maybe there's tears or shaking, there's a clearing, there's more receptivity and openness to respond in a more skillful way. So there's dukkha, in these relationships, in the world, internally. There's dukkha, and that there's a dukkha that leads to more dukkha, and there's dukkha that leads to freedom, to releasing some of these unskillful patterns, releasing the hindrances. So this is what I'm talking about, is that stopping when activated, just pausing. I know it's not easy. I come from an Armenian New York family, and we spoke and expressed dissatisfaction pretty loudly and clearly, So pause. It's possible. it's possible to pause. It's possible to pause. It's possible to ride the roller coaster and feel it at its peak. And once it's there, it will decline, So there's that trust, there's that saddha, that faith, that confidence that this is possible. A quote from Albert Einstein: "The world will not evolve past its current state of crisis by using the same thinking that created the situation. The significant problems we have cannot be solved at the same level of thinking with which we created them." So can we open up a little more into trusting the not knowing? Because this is where the answers come, you know? The conditioned mind, we're kind of just rolling around, but and sometimes, you know, we can be more skillful with that, but sometimes there's an insight that comes, can I just stop? Just like in that autobiography, 5 chapters. Oh, I don't have to do this. Oh, there's another road I can go down, you know? That's an insight. They start out not knowing. So we do this inquiry, we do this pausing, we do this deep listening, and then trust that something will emerge, you know? That's beneficial. With patience, we practice this. So, you know, I've done it this way before, it's not working. Maybe I can move into something bigger and trust that something new will emerge as I grow these qualities of embodied presence and love. So, like I said, this isn't easy, it's dukkha, and that's where wise effort comes in. Whether we use this challenging experience for liberation or just experience it as another round on what I call the dukkha dance floor, it's still going to be unpleasant, you know. Either way, it's dukkha. And practicing with mindfulness, investigation, and effort leads to freedom. Not doing so leads to more dukkha. So it's an honest effort. It's looking at the mucky, murky parts, as well as the beautiful, the uplifting parts. It's generating energy to keep those beautiful parts alive and nourished. And it's subduing the murky parts, the doubt, the ill will, the aversion, the clinging. The actual way wise effort is defined in the suttas is actively cultivating wholesome qualities and abandoning unwholesome ones. It's a fourfold approach in the suttas. It's preventing the arising of unwholesome states, abandoning those that have already arisen, developing wholesome states not yet arisen, maintaining and developing those that have already arisen. So one time I was working at a residential hospice house. I work as a hospice nurse and acupuncturist. And at this time I was working for Hopewell House, a hospice house that some of you might know in Southwest Portland. And it was a busy day. We were taking care of people who were having some pretty challenging symptoms. And I got a call from the admit nurse who was in another office, and he said, "You're getting an admission in 30 minutes. And I asked if he could hold the admission off till later. And he said, no, they need to be admitted now. And I got mad at him and hung up on him. Yeah. So we got the person admitted. I came home and was feeling bad about that encounter. And it's interesting that all these other encounters happened that day. You know, some good interactions with my coworkers, some good outcomes with patients. And what was predominant in the mind was I hung up on Mark. Right. So it's interesting how these things just kind of, it's a lot like a craw on your side or something. I forget what that saying is, but something like that. So, and felt the need to take it to the cushion. So I sat with it and felt the experience and felt into hanging up on Mark. You know, it's a real, you know, this is a litmus test. It's like a truth serum, you know, you just feel it, right? And there was a recognition that it was a really hard day. There was a sense of self-compassion, compassion to Mark, compassion to patients. There was a sense of, yeah, there was a reality that I hung up on Mark and that a good thing to do would be to apologize. So then there's that feeling, you know, like, oh no, I have to make amends with Mark. You know, I have to call Mark and apologize for hanging up on him. So, you know, that feeling, the pre-feeling when you feel like you did something that you need to make amends for. Yeah. So the next day I did. I called Mark. I said, Mark, I'm sorry I hung up on you yesterday. Hey, it's okay. It was a busy day. No problem. So, you know, it worked out fine. And it was important for me to do that whole process, and for a number of reasons. The main one being that feeling the dukkha of hanging up on someone and feeling the discomfort of preparing to apologize made it less likely that I would hang up on someone again. You know, I mean, when you really feel this, it's like, oh God, that's just too painful. I'm not going to do it again. Yeah. Rather than being self-justified, which I could have been. You know, I had plenty of reason to be justified. And that would have just been, again, another round on the dukkha dance floor, right? And I don't believe I've hung up on anyone since then. And it's possible. I mean, I'm not saying that it's going to happen. It's possible that circumstances will arise to do that. But this is a type of work that wise effort entails. So, and this is true for positive experiences as well. This is not a dirt. We're not just like, schlepping through the dukkha. When a generous act is done, when a kindness is extended, when we experience the beauty of nature, when we're in the presence of our beloveds, when we're with Sangha, feeling into that and steeping in that, making much of it. This is what nourishes the heart, and we need that. And I'd say now more than ever, we need that. We need to know. We need what nourishes the heart, what nourishes us, what connects us, what brings in these qualities of joy, of gratitude, of generosity. Hey, I'm here, I'm available. We need this. So part of wise effort is to feel into the results of meeting experience, either skillfully or unskillfully, as a way to grow and cultivate the heart of practice. And the Buddha talked about this with his son, Rahula, in the Rahula Sutta. And he asked his son, Rahula, what do you think a mirror is for? For reflection, sir. And the Buddha says, in the same way, Rahula, bodily actions, verbal actions, and mental actions are to be done with repeated reflection before, during, and after they're done, And at any of those 3 points, question yourself, is this an unskillful action that on reflection, is leading to self-affliction, the affliction of others, or both? If it is, you should give it up. But if on reflection, you know that it's not, you may continue with it. So this is wise effort, examining, what do I want to say or do? Is it skillful? What am I saying or doing? What did I say or do? Is it skillful? And if it's skillful, keep going. And if not, then reconsider. Perhaps I can do it differently next time. Perhaps I need to make amends with that person. Perhaps I can stop this train and pause before I go any further in that direction. So, okay. So at the end of a sitting period or any activity or conversation, we can review, what arose? How did I meet it? How does it feel to have met experience in that way? And this isn't to judge ourselves, it's to just gather information. What's worked? What needs to be fed? What needs to be toned down? So as we meet different mind states, we'll notice that some have been overdeveloped and some underdeveloped. A while back, I was taking care of my friend's 2 cats while they were away on vacation, named Max and Gigi. And this is what feeding them was like. Max was this hardy rescue kitty who had no issues eating his food and Gigi's food if he could, right? And so Max was the size of a little dog, and he was really shy. He'd only come out when I put the bowl out. He'd come up from downstairs, eat his food, look around for Gigi's food, and then go back downstairs, right? So I hardly saw Max. Gigi was this petite, somewhat emaciated kitty, a full adult kitty, who wasn't at all interested in eating. She needed to be spoon-fed on the counter so Max wouldn't eat her food to get nourished. So why am I telling you about Max and Gigi? There are mind states that are skillful and nourishing and may be underdeveloped and not at the ready, not the first thing that comes to mind. And these mind states need to be nurtured, like cultivating the Brahmaviharas, like cultivating kindness, compassion, generosity, joy, gratitude, awe, wonder, And there are mind states that may be overdeveloped, like anger or irritation or fear or impatience. And these need to be given less energy. And so just like Max and Gigi, their behavior isn't wrong. What they're doing isn't wrong. And these mind states aren't wrong. They're conditioned, They're not wrong. They're conditioned. And they need to be met as they are in ways that balance them out. And this is wise effort. So recognizing, what am I doing well and what needs to be adjusted? My partner and I have done, we used to do this nightly. It's not quite as often, but we just do a little ritual after meditation, and it's not deep processing. It's just a review, today I did that well, or I could have done that better. Maybe next time I'll try this instead. There's some acknowledgement, bringing attention to how we're navigating our life experience, and then we offer it up. We did our best. Time to blow out the candles, get a rest, and start again tomorrow, you know? Yeah. You know, another thing that you can do is when you notice that a mind state is present, what mind state is absent? So for example, if generosity is present, stinginess is absent. If joy is present, sorrow is absent. If the sense of welcoming what's here is present, being closed down is absent. So we can notice this, you know, this is here, this isn't. And conversely, if resentment is present, contentment is absent. If jealousy is present, seeing joy in the joy of others is absent. So in meditation practice, we feel into a response that might feel unfamiliar, awkward, and we trust in trying out a new way of being. Breathe with it, be with it, listen to the silence and trust in the unfolding. What are the results? You know, listening to the silence, trust in the unfolding. What are the results? And that willingness to listen is an important part of wise effort. Asking, what's really here? And not taking the first answer that comes to mind. How am I meeting it? And listen with that deep heart of receptivity. What about this wants to be known? Some people here who are in the beautiful women's circle that Alexa facilitates know that I really like this poem by Wendell Berry that exemplifies this sense of listening. It's called I Go Among Trees, and I'll just read a bit of it. It says, I go among trees and sit still. All my stirring becomes quiet around me like circles on water. My tasks lie in their places where I left them asleep like cattle. Then what is afraid of me comes and lives a while in my sight. What it fears in me leaves me, and the fear of me leaves it. It sings, and I hear its song. Then what I'm afraid of comes. I live for a while in its sight. What I fear in it leaves it, and the fear of it leaves me. It sings, and I hear its song. So in meditation, we create the space for something to arise that hasn't been brought to consciousness, and we listen. Part of wise effort is malleability. Sometimes we find a quiet clearing in the forest of the mind and listen, like you would if you were waiting patiently and quietly in a forest to see if you'd see a deer, or wait for nature to settle in around you. And sometimes we need to be more assertive and pull the curtain back. Who are you? This story of pulling the curtain back to see Oz is similar to the stories of the nuns during the Buddhist time, whose poems have been recorded in the Samyutta Nikaya, you know, a body of texts from the Buddha and his disciples. So here's an example. This is called With Soma. So this takes place at Savatthi, which is in India and it's close to the border of Nepal. And it goes, then the nun Soma, taking her bowl and robes, entered Savatthi for alms. After the meal, on her return from alms round, she went to the dark forest, plunged deep into it, and sat at the root of a tree for the day's meditation. Then Mara is like Mara the wicked one, or Mara the one that tries to fill people with doubt and get them off the path of practice. Mara, the wicked one, wanting to make the nun Soma feel fear, terror, and goosebumps, wanting to make her fall away from immersion, went up to her and addressed her in verse. That state's very challenging. It's for sages to attain. It's not possible for a woman. Then the nun Soma thought, who's speaking this verse, a human or a non-human? Then she thought, this is Mara, the wicked one, wanted to make me feel fear, terror, and goosebumps, wanted to make me fall away from immersion. Then Soma, knowing that this was Mara, replied to him in verse, what difference does womanhood make when the mind is serene and knowledge is present as you rightly discern the Dhamma, the teachings? Surely someone who might think, I am woman, or I am man, or I am anything at all, is fit for Mara to address. Then Mara, the wicked one, thinking, The non-soma knows me, miserable and sad, vanished right there, you know? And so this is like our mind states, when we sort of we're dragged around by something, you know, what is this? It's a thought, it's kind of like Mara, oh, they know me, and it dissolves, it goes away. It's not as, maybe it doesn't go away entirely, but it's not as compelling. It doesn't have as much of a grip. Yeah. So, and a non-soma really exemplifies the application of mindfulness investigation. What is this? And the effort, it took to just sort of to bring up that investigation and that clarity. So as we become familiar with different states of our mind, we learn what the right response is that's needed to meet them. So this aspiration or intention is a drop by drop practice of showing up and noticing what's here in this moment and responding what's needed to settle, to open and meet what's here. To paraphrase something I heard from Ajahn Sucitto, the practice of right effort is to savor skillful states and linger in them because they're food for the heart. And if the heart feeds on these skillful qualities, it won't get restless and hungry, murky and agitated, fearful and depressed, because it's getting good food. So it's pleasant to linger in the felt sense of gratitude, joy, happiness, love, awe. We can steep ourselves in these feelings. There are dimensions of those boundless, measureless qualities, the Brahma Viharas. And we spend a lot of time exploring our relationship with dukkha. And so we can notice, what's our relationship with uplifting mind states? And some of us find that challenging. Like, if I feel something uplifting, I'm betraying my relationship with dukkha, or what I mean? It's like, yeah. So no, you can. It's okay. Dukkha will be there, no doubt. So let's bring up these uplifting qualities. Is it possible to practice recognizing when a feeling tone is pleasant and saying to yourself, this is pleasant and it's okay to like this? Just that. This is pleasant. It's okay to like it and experience that. So I'm noticing the time, and I have always more than I want to share, that I have time to share. Bear with me a second while I cut things out. Yeah. So one thing that's important is to, have the body be a part of this investigation. When we mindfully investigate a sensation in the body, it informs us in a way that the thinking mind can't. The thinking mind doesn't feel, the thinking mind thinks. Doesn't feel, it thinks, perceives. It's that cushion, that's a thinking mind. The body feels. The body feels sensation, feels emotions. So this means that when we experience an emotion, let's say joy or anxiety, there'll be a corresponding felt sense in the body. Or sometimes there's a felt sense in the body that we can't identify. So just taking time to pause and feel into it with care and presence. And if we're not accustomed to feeling things out that way, we can practice in a simple binary way, touching into this felt sense. Does the heart feel opened or closed? Just that simple. In the body, is there a felt sense of expansion, or does it feel like there's a gripping, there's a contraction? So the basis of the Buddhist teaching is compassion. And if compassion isn't present, it's not right practice. Period. It goes along. Compassion comes along with this practice. And if it's not present, it's not right practice. So can meditation practice arise from knowing it's a kind and compassionate way to be, patiently allowing the mind and body to settle so that we can experience what's here with more clarity and meet it with kindness and discernment. And sometimes simply putting a hand lovingly or gently on our hearts, or acknowledging this is hard right now, and offering comfort, knowing that we're not alone in this, can be helpful. Or this is uplifting and it's a joy to be touching into this. Once there was a hospice patient who asked me if I could just give him a pill to end this charade. I was kind of, I felt really sad that that's how he saw his life, at the end of his life. And so the question is, like, do we bounce along this life like a ball in a pinball machine, seeking happiness here, trying to bounce a ball in that direction, pushing away on happiness there, and just going through our life trying to control it like that? Is it possible to feel into what it's like to be here, alive in this moment and befriend it? So this way we build future moments on the solid ground of presence, in a beautiful and organic way. So many factors are included in wise effort: mindfulness, discernment, investigation, energy, these 3 of the 7 awakening factors, patience, determination, along with uplifting qualities like kindness, compassion, joy, samadhi, a gathered mind, equanimity, love, awe, generosity, gratitude. So I just want to talk about 3 different levels or aspects to wise effort, and then we'll move into some breakout groups for a few minutes. So there's the personal, the interpersonal, and societal, and each one impacts the other 2. So on the personal level, self-care is really important. Are we meditating? Are we, we put our shoes on when we leave the house, because our feet are sensitive, and we know that the terrain is not always soft and easy. It's hard, it's sharp, it's hot, it's cold, it's painful. So we put our shoes on, yet what do we do to prepare the heart for going out to meet experience throughout the day and night? We just go out, grab our coat, put our shoes on, and go out there. Its heart's exposed to whatever, So, yeah. So especially in these times, I can guarantee you that the heart is going to meet things that are painful. So the practice is, how do we maintain buoyancy? How do we maintain a sense of being upright? How do we maintain balance? And it seems to me the Brahma Viharas are a crucial part of practice these days, of self-compassion, compassion for others, kindness, a welcoming heart, balance, space to touch into stillness, silence, breath, space to experience the shifts of sensations in the body, taking time to care deeply and intimately, like returning home to what's most essential, to immerse yourself in what's deeply supportive, taking time to unplug and rest in that inward dwelling space every day. Guided meditations, sitting silently, taking your seat every day to nourish the heart. On the interpersonal level, mostly it's conversation. How do we talk to one another? Those we like, those we don't like. When I consider this, I'm reminded of teachings by Thich Nhat Hanh, where he states in the mindfulness training on loving speech, aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others, I'm committed to cultivating loving speech and compassionate listening in order to relieve suffering and promote reconciliation and peace in myself and among other people, ethnic and religious groups and nations. It goes on, and it's worth reading if you get a chance. You could just look up 5 mindfulness trainings and look up the one on speech. So the third aspect is, how do we meet experiences in society with wise effort? How do we meet the suffering that's occurring in our world? We all know, many of us, most of us, if not all of us, know refugees and immigrants who are being detained and deported in Portland and all over our cities and towns. The wars and harm being done in the Middle East. How do we defend our constitutional rights for freedom of speech, freedom to gather, freedom for expression, freedom of religion? So with wise effort, we have to be discerning on what we pick up in each of these fields and how we pick it up. Do we have the inner resources to pick it up? And mindfulness is essential. It's absolutely essential in these times. For example, now I'm going to purposely take time out to watch the news. Now I'm going to have this conversation with my friend because I need support and connection. Now I'm going to meditate because I need to feel into the bigger field of life and love. Just like those questions that the Buddha asked his son, before, during, and after, on each of these three levels. Is it skillful? Does it lead to our well-being or the well-being of others? And both.